Hello and welcome to our series of business interviews. Today the interview is going to be conducted by Jonathan Slobin, who is a long-time associate of To The Point Marketing.
Our guest today here in Windsor is Will Murray. Welcome, Will.
Morning.
So, Will, you're the founder of Packtypes, which we're going to learn a little bit about shortly. But let's get this going. Can you just tell the listeners about your journey and how you came to be in the position where you started your own business?
Okay. Basically, I started in retail, working retail buying, people like Burton's, House of Fraser, Debenhams, Dixon's. Which is a brilliant place to start after university because, you know, it's just so exciting and you learn so much. But I think after a number of years there, I wanted something that was more people-orientated. So I was lucky to get an opportunity to move to BT just after being privatised. Spent 10 years at BT, just seeing it transcend from being a government utility to a business company selling business advice to other business people. And you know, it was an amazing 10 years, did everything, travelled everywhere, created stuff, worked with great people, and learned how to change the way people think and behave.
So what was your core skill? What did you bring to the table at BT?
Bravery and imagination, I think. A willingness to... bravery, really. I mean, basically, I didn't believe it could go wrong, and if it did go wrong, I'd get another job, and therefore I was fully prepared to try anything. And you know, retail is very customer focused
Yes.
as a sector, not necessarily on individuals, but as a group. And BT was completely non-customer focused. So when I joined, it was all regional and the same as the post office structure. When we left, it had completely changed to being line of business focused. And that was unthinkable when I joined. So that was a big achievement, really.
And personally, what were your key learnings at BT?
That if you get everything right, if you work bloody hard, and if you're with the right people, you can change the way people think and behave, and you can create an enterprise that is truly a joy to be part of and highly successful. Okay. But you have to have a massive vision, massive energy, a lot of discipline, a lot of resilience, and be prepared to do brave things.
And so your time at BT was clearly a success. Where did you go after that?
Ernst & Young, really. I mean, to be honest, the job had been done at BT. We converted it from being an engineering-based to customer-facing. I was just wondering what to do. I was approached by Ernst & Young, to marketing director there, and I fancied a different wall to bang my head against, if I'm honest, and a different environment, different types of people, and that's what they offered me.
And how was that different to BT?
It was very different, really. I think I began to realise just how good we'd made BT. Because the breadth, you know, of talent and the different types of people and the willingness, you talk about bravery, really, the willingness to take risks that we created in BT, whereas Ernst & Young was still incredibly risk averse and doing one thing well. Whereas I think, you know, I got excited by getting people to challenge themselves and challenge their businesses. But I think it also gave me a confidence that, you know, these big consultancy groups don't have all the answers, and that there's other things that can be done that they're not good at.
Such as?
People.
Again.
Yeah, people.
Yeah.
Basically, you know, I left there, which was all about process re-engineering and one type or another and cutting out cost and managing things, and moved into a world where we liberated talent. And I think, you know, if you've got two things on hand, you've got cutting out cost and improving process, or you've got liberating human energy, you'll get a much better bang for your buck liberating human energy than you will taking out cost.
So following that job, where did you end up moving to?
Well, after that, I basically decided to do my own thing. So
Yes.
I wrote a book for the Financial Times called Brandstorm that was all about this concept of organisational DNA and creating like a genetic code, which is basically what we've done at BT, how you create a genetic code that energises everybody to want to believe in and work and contribute towards the same goal. And then started, in a sense, using that as a philosophy, doing the same thing for a whole variety, Orange, Fujitsu, Marks and Spencer's, British Energy, government agencies, charities, schools, and I did that for just about 10 years.
And then that led you to start Packtypes.
Yeah, I mean, Packtypes grew after that directly.
So take us on that journey. Why Packtypes? What is Packtypes?
Okay. Packtypes is basically a relationship tool. You know, originally I thought that those guys were route to market, and they're not.
Okay, so how's your view of marketing strategy evolved and changed throughout this Packtype journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. If when you run a business like BT or Ernst & Young and you've got a massive multi-million pound budget and all of that sort of thing, your view of marketing strategy is one thing. When you're setting up your own business and you're doing everything from designing the products, creating them, printing them, publishing them, and everything else, and you're doing it all with limited resources, your idea of marketing strategy is something slightly different.
Sure.
I'm not even sure we certainly didn't at the beginning necessarily have a strategy. We had a passion and a vision. We had a vision. Our vision was one person, one pack. We wanted every person in the world to have a pack of Packtypes cards, and that's not changed. And what we did is we went on a meandering series of experiments, if I'm honest. And the ones that worked best we carried on, and the ones that didn't work we stopped. And we've been very good at stopping quickly and moving on. We're not afraid to make mistakes. But on the other hand, we don't want to make too many mistakes. We do need to learn from the mistakes we've made.
No, it's a robust way of going about running a business.
And everything we do is customer checked. Yeah. Everything from the first day has been bought by someone. Nothing's given away. Nothing is on a grant. Customers pay for our stuff. And that is if you can sell something like this to people who are actually paying out of their own pocket, be it a school. All our schools, they don't do this on grants. They pay out their and that is the greatest test of whether you've got something that adds value.
Absolutely. Okay, and if you could give our listeners one piece of advice that you've learnt about running a business, what would that be?
Everything takes far longer than you think. You have to have an inner energy and a resilience way beyond. I mean, the difference between self-employment or running your own business and being employed is just massive. We've taken on and worked with a number of people coming out of employment, and they just have so much struggled to. When you eat what you kill, it is such a tough world. But then you suddenly find you can, and that's when it becomes brilliant. When you've eaten what you can kill for 15 years and you're not dead, you realise that no one can ever make you redundant, no one can ever sack you. And if you closed one business, you could open another one tomorrow.
Yes.
Because it's the same skills. Yeah. And suddenly you end up with a quality of life. You watch your kids play rugby, you spend time with your partner, you work when you work, you don't work when you don't work. But there's a pain barrier you have to get through. And I think that whether you're working on your own or you're setting up a small business or even a medium-sized business, that sense of resilience to get through the hump and the discipline to do that, and the hope and the passion and the belief that you can do it. So many people, I think you talk about marketing strategy, so many people do not invest enough in a proper proposition. They chuck some stuff out there. We've put a huge amount of effort into the look and feel of our product. People love our stuff. They love the way it looks. They love the way it feels. I set out to create a world-class brand when it was just an idea in my head. And I had a vision of where I wanted to be. So that sense of vision, that sense of I'm building... I could have been IBM, I could have been Apple, to my mind. In fact, it's a little business. It didn't make any difference. Everything I did, I wanted to be to that standard. And just constant relentlessness and resilience.
So we've understand where you are today, and we also understand the big vision of one pack, one person. Where would you like to be in, say, 3 years' time?
I guess it's really hard. I mean, I think in this whole issue of tipping point, I mean, I have a vision. I don't know when that tipping point is going to occur. We have a series of exciting initiatives going at the moment. Any one of which could be that tipping point. We have a number of marketplaces. Obviously, we're working with big corporates like Asda. We're working with these big public services. We have a lot of people increasingly buying individual packs of ours off the web. They'll just go onto packtypes.com and buy a pack for their own use.
How much do they cost?
It's £25, including that, for an individual pack.
And you get more than a pack of cards, don't you?
That's a whole pack. Being excluded 3 or 4 times, come to you and they talk to you about how their life has changed, how they've just been given an apprenticeship somewhere. When you get kids that come out of young offenders institutes, kids in gangs, and you get their stories, people that have been in abusive relationships that are no longer in them, people with their own teenage kids where they've seen and helped their children turn corners. That type of feedback, that's what really sort of is exciting to us now. And for me, that's my passion now. Going back to the one person, one pack thing. I want to make the world a better place. I know it sounds very Miss Worldy, but that's our goal. We're trying to make the world a better place, but one person at a time. And we're doing it. If I was to stop now, there's a few 100,000 people in this country whose life has been improved. Now, I don't want to give up now. I want to keep... But imagine the power of doing that right across.
Yes.
Because what we're talking about here is emotional literacy. So something that started off as a way of helping businesses make more money, in essence, or be more profitable, has become a way of, liberating individuals and talent and creating emotional literacy, which, if you look at some of the big things that, like the abolition of slavery, if you look at things like, emancipation, what we're talking about here is empowerment. Empowerment per se has a massive, getting people to take responsibility for their own attitude, behaviour, performance on a global scale. I mean, I don't know about you, I'm a dad, and, my children, I don't think the way we're running the world today is sustainable. I think that I think that if we carry on like we are, then the world has got problems.
Yes.
And I think that the type of leadership that we have at a global national level is inappropriate for wanting what is effectively a global village. So we need to change the attitude to relationships, to cooperation. And I think one of the things I found in corporate life, and you see it in political life as well, is there is no real belief in the quality of teamwork, because they've been so conditioned for so long with poor examples of it. A bit like the FIFA thing. Some of this stuff is so endemic,
yes,
that they do not see another way of operating. And a part of that is a male-female balance thing, into that. But there's an issue there of balancing results against empathy and stuff like that. And we've got to change the way we lead the world. And I don't think that's going to happen top-down. But if you can imagine every child going through school being profoundly more self and socially aware, with a completely different attitude to things like relationships, teamwork, cooperation. Imagine that generation en masse coming through in different countries around the world.
Huge change, a huge movement.
It's seismic.
Yeah.
And, I think that great things happen, they start somewhere. And I think, I feel comfortable that we're making a small contribution to that.
Fantastic. I'd like you to think a little bit more about yourself now. So where does your energy and drive come from? What actually makes you get up in the morning? What's happened in your life that really spurs you on?
I mean, I think initially when I started in place like Reed, it was money and power, fast cars and holidays. And nice, I wanted a country house with a moat. It was pretty obvious what I wanted. I think, about 40 that changed. This is sort of I started working for myself. And I suddenly realised there's a lot more to life than money. I think, I'm not saying money's not important, it's not useful, because it gives you choices, and choices are great. But I guess, that bit I just told you about something that has the ability to make this planet sustainable. If you can do something like that, even if it's a small way, that's hugely powerful. So Packtypes isn't a business for me anymore. It's a route to having an impact on creating a better society, I guess, and that for me is more motivating than anything else. Fantastic.
Good. Right, we're going to change the paces of the interview completely now. Dave, as always, has been sitting patiently. He's taken his notes. Dave, first of all, would you like to just comment generally about what you've heard Will talk about? And then more specifically, Will...
Just a couple of things that struck me. One is, I think we're always looking for the degree of passion that you've found in this pursuit, and I would urge anybody listening that if you can find that in something, and then the income part and the work part of it becomes secondary to your cause or to your passion, then I think that's the holy grail. So congratulations on finding something that you're really passionate about. I think in my case I'm probably still looking. I don't know about you, Jonathan, but we're always looking for those sorts of things where you can really get emotionally behind it.
Yeah, totally.
And then the other thing I noticed, which Jonathan did comment on, but the strategy part of it. You talked about trial and error or experimentation, and it's not the first time on this podcast we've discussed that. Is that strategy development doesn't have to be back in the classroom for 6 months like a corporation doing processes to work through systematically to come up with a strategy. However, that can play and probably must play a role to some degree at some point in time, but the experimentation that you described I think is actually a very powerful strategy development process, as long as you do what you said you do, which is that you learn and then you invest more or you pull back. The danger would be that experimentation becomes a cop-out for a lack of prioritisation, and then that's a fine line, because your resources into multiple experiments that don't come to an end because you can't prioritise, it would be the other end of the spectrum where it becomes an excuse. And I'm not suggesting that, by the way. I'm just, I have seen that. I've also seen the other end where experimentation doesn't feature in strategy, which can be very hampering for innovation, because companies will never know enough about every opportunity and will have to run experiments in order to learn enough. Because there's never such a situation as perfect data around opportunities. Sometimes you have to give it a try and then do more or do less. The third area, though, that I think there's some of your in your strategy development process, which we didn't talk about, but you alluded to it, which is we would sort of completing the Venn diagram here is we would call sort of leadership-led strategy. That's where people like yourself, coming out of many years of serious corporate experience, know enough to be dangerous, so that you know enough as a leader to come in and see an opportunity, put some passion into it, and get the first foot on the ground and drive that from your own insights as to what you've learned over the many years of corporate life. So the question we've been asked, and many times, is, well, what's the best way of going about strategy development? And actually, the cop-out answer, certainly from an academic standpoint, is it's actually a mixture of those three. It sounds to me, and it may be not the right time, but it sounds to me like you've got some leadership-led aspects of what you're doing, which is not surprising. You are experimenting. You may need to bring in some sort of systematic planning to layer it in at the appropriate time. In that, as you grow, you'll be a kid in a candy store, and you might have to make some discipline trade-offs alongside these other two behaviours. And the real answer to that question of mixture depends on the business, depends on the market. In highly turbulent markets, it's not really appropriate to have 6-month planning processes because they change overnight. In markets that are very planned, in my old world, in pharmaceuticals, a lot of systematic planning, probably less leadership-led and too little experimentation. But the mix between those three, I think, is academically interesting, but it's a very practical issue for SMEs, probably starting off with one or two of those, but maturing to be able to use different approaches to strategy development through time.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a really tricky. I mean, I think you're talking about prioritisation. I'm increasingly aware of the importance of focus, which is the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. We're on the same page. Yeah,
and it is when at what point do you say, right, this is the one I'm going to focus on? I mean, we have the problem that we're not copying anybody.
Yeah,
and 95% of easy, successful businesses are copying a formula.
Yes,
it's a lot easier to be a sort of first follower than the leader. And we're definitely a leader here. There's no one else doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And indeed, in fact, the models I looked at for similar type academic ones were completely misleading.
Right.
Because we are genuine about empowering and liberating. It's more like, when you get these softwares that are free to all, ours is a little bit like that in a sense. There is a cost, but it's very low cost. That makes it very accessible. All the models were very controlling, and they kept the intelligence close, and they managed it, and they made them high cost per intervention. So that there wasn't anything for me to copy on that front. So when you think about this concept of transformational play, it is innately playful, but it's also transformational.
Yeah.
And along that continuum, there's a lot of different places you can be.
That's right.
But where we want to be is both ends. And that is what makes us unique. There isn't, I mean, if you take someone like Asda, 180,000 people, there is no other approach around today where you can genuinely equip every one of those 180,000 people. Because what we've done is we've worked to make this basically training free. So you don't. So as the guy, their challenge to me was, how we like this if we don't have to take guys off the shop floor.
Yeah.
Because the costs per head are low. If we suddenly have to put 2 to 3 days training on it, the cost of 180,000 people over 3 days is a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's prohibitive. So we've worked very hard to make this training free. So whether you've got 2.5 million people, whether you're the Chinese army, whether you've got, we can equip a whole organisation. But that's a different mindset. Because most organisations have written off that as a possibility.
Yeah.
They don't what they do is they train a certain proportion of people. So we're really making them think differently about that.
Yeah.
But in all those situations, what tends to drive the adoption of Packtypes is end user response. So So even as we never finished any of the trials we've done because the reaction from end users has been so positive. They've been overwhelmed by demand and they've just gone on to the next step.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the same in most of our other clients, like the police and everywhere else.
Yeah.
And I think the strategy, I think, really you could almost look at what we've done to date as paid for R&D. It's been 3 months to create the cards, 7 years to learn how to use them.
Right.
And we've sort of got that right now. We're at a very much a watershed where that word focus is utterly critical, and I want to focus very hard. The school's business, in a sense, is taking care of itself. We have a momentum there.
Yeah.
And again, even with that, we're about constant simplification. At the moment, we tend to sell it. I want to make it so it can be bought without being sold, so that's our next challenge there, because the cost per head is much lower than the cost of sale. Then the corporate business is beginning to take place, and the people's reaction since the Asda thing has been amazing, because they've de-risked it for other people.
Yeah.
If they think someone like Asda can do it for 25,000 people, they think, well, they can, and that's been it. And then they see Accenture at the other end of and they think, well, maybe they can do this. But ultimately, my next goal is the consumer market.
Yes.
And we have a partnership with Psychologist magazine, and that's been very interesting, and they're a huge fan of Packtypes. But of course, that's a limited audience. People that buy Psychologist are generally interested in personal development. Packtypes isn't a personal development tool; it's a life tool. So I want to. My biggest challenge at the moment is how. Also, we have wonderful advocates. We have people that just where Packtypes have changed their life. We haven't quite created a forum for them to have a voice. I think we're, in some respects, the world's best kept secret, really, when it comes to how much Packtypes can do for an individual, and just how passionate individuals that have experienced it are. Somehow or other, we need to find a way of getting that voice heard, and it's not my voice or Packtypes' voice; it's the voice of our advocates.
Yeah.
So that's a particular challenge I want to get.
It's your big strategic challenge of the moment.
It is really. It's the big
Yeah.
one, because once you crack that, I'll give you an example. Listening on the radio on the way down, and I had one of the women's FA footballers, and they got about the World Cup coming, and she talked about the biggest change in their team since the new manager took over, and said, we're doing personality stuff, we're looking at the dynamics, and it's changed the way I see myself, my strengths, my team. We're learning how to communicate in matches, all that sort of stuff. And that ultimately, because ours does that in spades, it does that at a turbo boosted version. There's a guy called Lord Knight, Jim Knight. He was the previous education minister for schools under Labour a while ago. And he described that they have a program called SEAL, which is social and emotional aspects of learning and education. And he sort of described this as rocket-powered SEAL. And in essence, that's what it is. It's a rocket-powered way of taking people places they've never been. And I want to get that voice out there. I want people to be playing and sharing and talking. And if we can do that, maybe you guys can help us. That is the holy grail for us.
So Dave, what's going through your mind at the moment?
Well, there's a massive amount of stuff, probably partly that I don't understand in what you have done, and versus so any comments I make, now are in the absence of seeking first to understand, which is a bad start. But I from what you're saying, I think finding the segments, if you like, of unmet need which you're starting to say, like in education or in the police force or in businesses and so on, is a great start point, because you've got to find people with the highest unmet need and people with responsibility and some budget that trying to address these things and actually build a critical mass and an evidence base and a credibility factor around it. So there's that all of those tranches are doing that, and they're sort of commercially viable. The need is there because people are buying the product, and then you're building up that critical mass. But the bigger point that springs to mind for me is this issue of word of mouth. And this really is, what you're describing to me is a word of mouth issue. And there's two schools of thought around word of mouth marketing. One is that it happens organically, which is true. But we would come more from the school of driving word of mouth marketing. There's a whole bunch of literature in fact, on this very podcast we recently interviewed Emmanuel Rosen, who wrote The Anatomy of Buzz a couple of times. He released a second edition. I've certainly read Malcolm Gladwell's book. I'm just reading Contagious at the moment, and there's a range of books on that topic, and the concept there is that things that are remarkable, i.e. worth remarking on because they are life-changing or game-changing and stuff, people will proactively share them.
Yeah.
Then comes the question, you say, well, that's the organic question. As long as you've got the remarkability, that's not just in the pack of cards,
But
it's
the-
also in everything you do.
Yeah, I know, but the interesting thing is, I think we punch below our weight here because the
Yeah.
personal stories we get are literally extraordinary. You know, we're talking about
Yeah.
massive personal advocates.
So I'll come into that. So the organic piece of the word of mouth, you're getting some of it.
Not as much. I don't think we're getting as much as we should. Not
some of it.
not compared to the direct stories we get.
Okay, so then the question then, which we may have to take offline, because given the nature of this, the complexity here. But so I'm involved in a couple of other projects at the moment where the art here around word of mouth marketing is to try and understand what, the hubs and spokes of influence in a market, hubs of opinion leaders, if you like, in the world today. It could be a blogger, it could be a teacher, it could be that's a complex story. But the hubs and spokes of interconnectivity in markets are, I work in healthcare quite often. There's a lot of opinion leaders who really influence what happens in clinical practice. Now, in an old traditional sense, you would hit some of those people. You might be lucky actually that one of them picks it up and becomes evangelistic. But word of mouth marketing would be a much more proactive approach to identifying hubs, seeding hubs, and building a relationship with those hubs. As long as the product and the behaviours you bring with it, the pricing, everything is remarkable, you are not then organically working on word of mouth. You are proactively designing it. So you see examples with books that have been written that the author will seed the books into 50, or 100 or thousands of book clubs around the US, and suddenly a book that would have been a minnow, not well known, is suddenly talk of the town because it went out not from a chance event to all the people in the know. And actually hubs and spokes in terms of influence are not just professional, they are very much social, and it's both.
I'll take a point on this, because we've, over the last few years, we have made a number of foyers of, what's that word, into that, with different agencies. We found it really hard to find, because everybody and their dog says they do that stuff. From strategic marketeers through to old PR companies. And most of them don't seem to know how to do it. Because we've put a bit of money, not a huge amount, but a bit of money with a lot of different types of companies. And they all come back and tell us they want to redesign and restructure our website. But at the end of the day, there's only so many times you can rewrite a website.
Well, which brings me to my last point. Let's talk about this further another time. But the other point I would then say is, which is a double-edged sword, is that you mentioned the website. That certainly wouldn't be my conclusion, by the way. But the volume control on word of mouth is there as well. So the social media aspect of it is not a replacement for word of mouth. Most word of mouth goes on in the absence of the internet. Most.
I think this is very misunderstood.
Massive. It's like 90% of it goes on outside of the internet. That said, the volume control on word of mouth on the internet, using social media channels and the interconnectivity, the PR that related to that and so on, you need to do both. So there are agencies out there who know how to do that. It wouldn't come inexpensively to do it thoroughly. But I'm a big believer in the whole science and application of that thinking, because if you want to create a movement, it needs to, you almost need to be working the interconnectivity in markets and between people. And you and I, in context, we will pass on our views to our network, depending on the subject matter, depending on the relevance of the subject matter at the right time. And if I love this, your Packtypes proposition, because if it changed my life, for example, I've been through it once and I'm not familiar enough, but then I will tell other people about it, and that word of mouth is going to be the most powerful way of passing this on. But we could talk about this for hours now. But I think there's probably something in that to talk a little bit more about except for doing up your website, there's probably a lot more complex thinking around this. Right?
That's what we normally get. They
yeah.
come off and they all come back. Oh, we want to restructure and redesign, put it on a different platform.
Yeah,
and I think
that's the easy work.
Let me just
that's what they know what to do. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, let me just make one comment on that, because Jonathan will kick me out in a minute for time. But I'd say 80% of our clients, or something like that, are, and we had one recently. They said, "Oh, the web developer sent me a brief to fill in. I couldn't fill it in because so Jonathan and I spend all of our time, in fact, talking to businesses about the fundamentals of marketing and saying, what unmet need are you trying to serve with whom, so you know exactly what these customers want, and your proposition better meet that need better than anything else available at the right price, and then in terms of the 10 or 20 opportunities of people out there that you could be focusing that proposition on who have a different degrees of that need, you better pick 2 or 3 where it's really prominent and they're a bit of a slam dunk and your proposition nails it. And after that, then I'll worry about positioning. What do I want them to think about my business and my product and my uniquely versus competitor offerings? What messages will I communicate to these people to make them motivated, clearly differentiated and relevant to them? Only then will I talk to you or anyone else about, well, let's think about how to reach these people. Now, it might be my website's important, it might not. It might be social media, it might be trade shows, might be direct mail, might be some other marketing channel, of which there are numerous, and they're all very expensive. But the problem I find is, just to your point there, is that anybody who comes to me and just says, "Oh, redo your website," well, no. Expensive investments in tactical marketing issues like that are nothing short of mudflinging, in the hope that something will stick. If you haven't sorted out who you're talking to, what they want, and exactly what you're going to offer them that is compelling, and then we might say we'll deal with the website, some social media, and some PR. And we know we're spending it wisely. That's what we do.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I'll give you a bit of feedback as a bit. We probably spent 10 to 15% of our turnover on marketing in the last few years.
Yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
Which is good. I would say the vast majority has been wasted, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Outside education stuff's fine, but we know what we're doing there. I've done that myself. We haven't had any help with that. That bit works. The rest, our business has grown through people coming to us. We've invested quite a lot in different types of marketing, most of which hasn't worked. And I think that because this multiplicity of channel an issue, it's all right if you're a big company and you're taking the very top people that are available. The vast majority of the people trying to advise in this market don't understand the market. They don't understand how to help, because if they're an old PR company, they're still wedded to an old model. If they're an old tech company, advertising company, they're emerging out of a base, and very few people truly understand this world in which we're operating. So the people trying to advise me often are less experienced than I am. And I want people that actually help, not just take my money.
What tends to happen is that entrepreneurs and business founders like you take a sceptical view of marketing, because they say, "Oh, I've tried PR, that doesn't work. I've tried social media, that doesn't work," and they get a little bit ground down because their starting point is the tactics for them, when they should have been actually starting with the big picture stuff that Dave's just explained.
And I also think, if I'm honest, the way a lot of these companies, these marketing agencies of different types, tariff their services is out of date too.
Yeah,
they're based on a world that no longer exists. Their expectation of how they should be paid and what they should be paid for, and they want to be paid to research a business, and then they want this and that, and 6 months in they haven't delivered anything, but the checks are coming. And I think that's just unrealistic. They've got to look at obviously with PR companies, they used to own this editor thing. That's blown out the water now. So I, like many people, I think in my situation, are prepared to spend money, but I think we're looking for a far more modern, innovative, creative, not just set of solutions and knowledge, but actually a more innovative way of working with companies like mine. Because some of these big companies, they chuck money at things because they've got the money. When it's your own money, you're not unwilling to spend, but you're unwilling to spend repeatedly and get nothing for it.
Yeah, which is fair enough.
Fair enough. Time is marching on. Will, we're wrapping up. You've been a fantastic guest. I've got a couple of closing questions for you. The first one: what is your favourite business book, and more particularly, why?
Right. Well, you probably picked up. I'm not a great fan of business books. I mean, there are some good ones, and I read one recently. I think it's called Storytelling. It's from American. There's this whole concept of marketing through stories, and they were talking about people like Red Bull, and that was quite interesting. I mean, I guess from the traditional end, I think most business books are far too long.
Yes.
So something like Who Moved My Cheese, I like. I think it's a bit banal, but I love its shortness. But I think actually sometimes you get more out of other books. I mean, things like A.A. Milne and his sort of Pooh Bear and all that stuff. You know, that some of the morals of those things are actually more interesting, and they're less po-faced and they're more readable. So,
funny enough, you're not the first person who sat in that chair giving a very similar answer.
Okay.
We interviewed Simon Carter, the fashion brand, Simon Carter himself, the fashion brand. He said almost exactly the same answer.
I was shown one the other day, and because obviously I come across a lot of authors that have written books, and the level of complexity in them. I mean, if I had the time to read this book to get the value in it, then I'd probably get something out of it. But I don't have the time to read a book that's 3/4 of an inch thick to get 7 pages worth of value. And to be honest, there's so much stuff available on the internet. Now, that's not to say I'm anti-books. I've written quite a few myself. Mine are brilliant by incident. But Think Dog Rules for Life, best book, one of mine. But I think, there's an adage, it takes a lot longer to write a short book than a long book.
Yeah.
And I think that the way the publishing...
Well, the quote was Mark Twain. It was, it's something I wanted to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one. That's Mark Twain.
And that's what books... And it's exacerbated by the publishing industry, because they tell you, like, when I was doing my old books with serious publishers, like Capstone, John Wiley, and everything, they give you a word count. They say, I want 55,000 words.
Yeah.
You write 20, and you think, God, I need another 35,000. And you start getting guff, and you fill it in. And because as a reader, you have to separate out all the guff to get to the good bit. So I think, again, it's one of those things where we have to completely revolutionise, I think, a little bit, the way... And again, what I love about Packtypes is there's elements you have to read, but it's an experience. It is like going on holiday rather than reading a travel book. And I think there's so much more in life. You get so much more out of something that's experiential.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if people can write some really good short books, then I'd love to read them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's just on a very small scale, and it happens every day. A friend of mine, because I was in pharmaceuticals for 25 years, a friend of mine sent me a yet another slide deck yesterday. And as always, and this is no disrespect to people, but as always, it was a reading document, a laundry list of stuff. It took me an hour to rewrite it into 7 slides, with no more than 3 bullet points on each side and a picture.
Yeah.
And to make it into an elevator pitch. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that I'm the best person in the world at doing that. I'm sure there are a lot better people than me. But to your point, that is incredibly rare to find people who can cut to the chase in a few words to get things across. And there's these tomes of boring stuff. I mean,
but also the publishers, their books are weighed. If it's true. If it's not, they won't pay you 10,000 words of pure brilliance. Right. They'll pay you less for than 50,000 words of guff.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Any business book over 10,000 words should not be published.
That's most of them.
Yeah, I rest my case.
Yeah.
So stick to Pooh Bear and you'll be fine.
I agree.
We'll
I agree.
We'll stick to that.
So look, you've been a wonderful guest. What we'd like to do, Will, is make a small donation to your favourite charity. So what is your favourite charity, and again, why?
Okay, now that is a really tough question because there are so many worthy causes, and the one that's come to mind to me is the RNLI, for 2 reasons really. First of all, because these guys exhibit enormous courage and an extraordinary selflessness. And I guess if you think about my philosophy, what we're trying to do, selflessness and courage, bravery, very much align. And I love the sea.
Good. It'll happen. Very good.
So,
as we close, this is your opportunity, Will, to tell everybody where they can access Packtypes, where they can contact you, and also tell them remind them a little bit about the books you've written and where they can get hold of those.
Okay, well, Packtypes.com is our website, and everything can be accessed through that. we have these self-awareness packs. You can buy them off the web for you as an individual. We can provide solutions for whole organisations. It'll all be accessed through packtypes.com. I've written a number of books. I'm just writing one at the moment called Transformational Play, which will be out shortly, which I think, in a sense, that's the one, because I think my own... I look back on some of the books and there's some good stuff in it, but taking my own suggestion, distilling it down is the key. We don't have time for complexity in our lives. And, a book, I think, should inspire, not inform. And I think that so many of these books, and some of my early books, there's far too much content and not enough inspiration. When you use Packtypes, one of the key things is it encourages great reflection and great conversation. That's the key, I think. It's not what someone can tell you. It's how they can make you think and what they can make you think of. Which is why I don't think, a little bit of pith and a lot of reflection time is the way to go.
Good. Will Murray, you've been a fantastic guest. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.